Aloha. Welcome to the Triple F podcast. I'm Jim Hochberg. Eva and I today are going to talk about music, but what we're going to talk about music is something else. So let's stay tuned. Hey, Eva.
Hey, Jim.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
So, I'm good. You know how when you read something and then it kind of makes you start thinking about it, and then you get like complicated thoughts about it and you contemplate and all that. So that's why we're going to talk about this today, because I had that exercise with an article.
And that could be on anything. I mean, we do that during the legislative session.
Correct.
That
true.
is our normal thought process. But you want to do something a little bit more fun today, in a sense that we're not.
How do you know?
Because I'm drilling into your mind, and I've worked with you so long that getting outside of legislature and politics for a while, we're going to do something different. But I'm curious.
Well, and what people might not know is that separately, you and your brothers play music, and separately from them, I play music at church. And actually, in April and in May, I'm going to play music with your brother James at the Charismatic Catholic Church service, but they don't really have a place, so we have to find where we're going. And all
right, and I know that James likes to listen to our show.
Oh, hey, James, I'm looking forward to it.
And James, you can count words all you want to, and I'm not going to beat Jim today. But I have to tell you one music story, since we're going to talk about worship, because you will appreciate this. So I served in the United States Air Force, right? And so in basic training, it was my third day of basic training, and this captain comes in and he says, "How many of you play an instrument?" So, several of us raised our hand. And so he said, "Get your stuff and follow me." And so we're all thinking, are we going to go jam somewhere in the middle of basic training?
Are you getting thrown out?
Yeah, it's happening, right? So they take us into this room, and he says, "All right, what we're doing is we're looking for musicians to join the drum and bugle corps. So you all have music background, if you're interested, just join, get on the bus." And so I'm thinking, okay, I'm processing in my head what musical instruments I play, because I play ukulele and I play guitar, right? So I'm thinking, I don't think those things are in the drum and bugle corps. So I was ready to say no. So one of the girls that was there,
You play harpsichord.
I don't know. You are too funny. But in any case, one of the girls that was in my flight, she's like, "You got to do this. You got to do this." And so I just nodded, packed my stuff, and followed us on this bus. They take us to one of the Quonset huts, and they basically say, "Welcome to the drum and bugle corps." And then they take us to another Quonset hut where they're going to tell us what instrument we're going to play. And I'm dying. I'm absolutely dying. So I get there, and they're going down the list, and people are like, "I played trombone. I played trumpet," right? And I'm at the end. There was probably about 8 of us girls. The rest were all guys. And they get to the girls, and the girls are like, "I play, piano." And I'm like one of the last two, and I'm thinking, oh, this is not going to be good. Are they going to put me on a bus and ship me back? So they get to me and they said, "What do you play?" And I said, "Well, I play ukulele and I play guitar." And they said, "Great. That means you have rhythm. Welcome to the drum and bugle corps." So I'm thinking, how is this going to pan out? So then they take us to another room where they assign us our instruments. Jim,
drum.
They signed me the bass drum. And then on our first day of practice, they lay out music notes. I'm from Hawaii. We kanekapila. We just play, right? I mean, some people know how to read music. Some people just play. And they put these notes in front of me, and I'm thinking, now what am I supposed to do with this? But what was interesting is very quickly I realized that the notes on the page, it matched where I needed to hit the.
So drum notation is different from musical
very
instrument.
Different.
Every line and space on the staff for drum notation is a surface. And so it's either this cymbal or this drum head or this cowbell. More cowbell! Yeah, because my son took drum lessons to be able to learn how to read. And that's how I learned that.
It was fantastic. And do you know that was one of the best experiences I had in basic training, was being in the drum and bugle corps, because there is something, and I think it's going to tie into what we're going to talk about today, because there is something guttural that happens when you have the right rhythm, you have the right music, you have the right lyrics to something, and it just kind of takes you away. In fact, I help the deacon formation program for the diocese, and they're teaching these guys how to do homiletics. And one of the guys recently did a practice homiletics, and he started his homily doing this. And everybody joined in. And he made the comment that having this where you just can connect, what song that is, whether you like Queen or you don't like Queen, what song that's getting to. And that's kind of like, we were created by a great God that helps us plug into this deep worship just based on what we have happening deep inside of us. So I'm kind of interested to see where you're going to take us today.
Well, so let's lay out some basics. So what is music, right? Music is tonality and rhythm. The tonality is the melody, the harmony, the pitches that you hear, and the rhythm is the tempo at which they change. And as you know from reading music, if you do or maybe not, some notes get held longer, some notes are held shorter, and that's the tempo that you end up with. So that's music.
And that's the technical side. You've got people listening right now that don't care about the technical side. They're like, music is whatever they like, right? So it can be selective. Like some people might like classical music, some people might like rock music, but you're talking about the foundations of what makes music. Right. But then there is that aspect of human appreciation for it.
So the question kind of is, how do we end up with music being composed of tonality and rhythm? How did we get there? And like, if you ever saw Mel Brooks's The History of the World Part 1, you saw the cavemen standing there waiting for their feet to be hit with the big rocks, and they would scream out a tone, and it became the Alleluia chorus. Have you seen that movie?
Our people that listen and watch this are learning everything about your type of movies that you like.
Well,
but yes.
it was pretty clever. It was darn clever.
Mel Brooks was okay.
So anyway, the question that I'm reading this article by Father Robert R. Riley, and the title of the article is Music Sacred? And that was interesting to me. It was from 2009. This was an old article.
I want our viewers and listeners to know that our producer behind the camera is rolling because Jim could not pronounce Riley.
No, I couldn't see it. It was like really, this is an old, I am cleaning out my office, throwing things away because I'm moving. And I found this really old article that I took out of somewhere once. It was from 2009, actually.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so.
And so anyway, I couldn't read it. So, so the question becomes, did man create tonality and rhythmic music, or did God build it into nature and man simply found it?
And I know what I believe.
Well, and it's kind of interesting. And what was interesting about the article is...
And we don't want to turn people off that are not Catholic just because this was written by a Catholic,
right? It's about music.
Yeah, it's about music. So don't turn us off. Stay tuned. Listen.
Music's rhythmic aspect is math, because you count the number of beats based on the key signature before you move to the next note in the rhythm. It's
theory.
It's math. It's math.
Theory.
I mean, it's math. And Pythagoras is the guy in ancient Greece that figured out math, numbers, counting, relationship by equidistant stuff. And he believed that the universe was made up of math, and in the astronomy, there was harmony in the universe. And Aristotle, who came after him, said that the universe, the heavens, all of the planets and galaxies and all that stuff moving around in space is a musical scale of numbers.
Did you ever watch A Beautiful Mind?
I think so, but it was kind of boring.
Well, it gets into all of that, the way that some people view the world. But
so let's get back to Aristotle. So he said that the rotation of the planets and the moons and the stars through the sky produced tones at different levels, and together the tones created harmonies. And that man-made music is the best man can do to replicate God's harmonies. And then Plato came along, and these guys, I guess, read each other's stuff because you couldn't look it up online, you know. So anyway, Plato got into the act and said that rhythm and harmony find their way into the inward places of the soul, which imparts grace, which was very interesting to me because Plato wasn't a Christian. That hadn't come around
But
yet.
I think
and he wasn't even Jewish.
But I think the contemporaries of the time, there might have been people that were leaning toward that belief system that maybe, because I mean, the good thing about the Greeks that they debated all kinds of stuff, right? So they always had differing thoughts that they would bring into the public square.
Did they get paid to do that?
I don't know, but you know what? It brings up, I know I was going to find a way to bring up elections to this, and that brings up a good, because the Greeks knew how to bring differing thoughts into the public square to provide healthy debates. What are we missing in Hawaii? Healthy
Plato
debates.
and Aristotle.
Healthy debates. Why? Because it's only one-sided rather than having a plethora
but that's because
of
we don't
sounds
elect
that come
people
together harmoniously
we don't
like
elect
music.
the right people.
Okay, that's
But
different.
why is it that we as a society today don't know about the ancient Greek approach to the universe being music and man's created music poor replica? Why don't we know that? Because it's 2024 now, and all of Western civilization up until 1920 was steeped in ancient Greek understanding of music.
Are you assuming that all professors are teaching things that all students should know?
Well, actually, what this article does is it shares some of the American composers from 1920 forward up to the 60s. And it's kind of like if you ever saw a movie about how the Beatles made their records, and I don't remember what record it was, but they took reel-to-reel tape of Symphony, and they cut it up into 1-inch pieces, shaked it around in a bowl, and then made them into a long piece again that could run through the machine, and it was total dissonance. It was chaos, and it's on the record. You can hear this, you know. And so, in order to think that was an okay thing to do, something had to change from the understanding that music was created by God to be harmonious. If you're going to create unharmonious music. Well, what happened is in the West in 1920, a guy took music and did that kind of a thing like the tape, although it wasn't necessarily a recording. So there are 12 half steps in a chromatic scale, which is every note a half step up until you reach the same note again on the scale. So what this guy did is he said tonality doesn't matter. Let's make music that has rules, which tonality and rhythm are the rules of music. Let's make music that has rules, but the rule is going to be on that 12-note chromatic scale. When you make a song, you can't use a tone twice before you've used all 12 tones.
You have just lost about 90% of our listeners who are like, what?
And I think that guy was like on acid or something. You know, I mean, who wants to make music like that? But the point is, this was a offspring of
what you were saying the Beatles did.
No, the Beatles did it later. But this guy's thinking was an offspring of... Oh, come on, Hochberg. Who's the guy in the Galapagos Islands in the 1800s that said,
if I know the answer to that, I don't have a life.
You do.
I do. I do not know that.
No, who's the guy that evolution? Who's the king of evolution?
Darwin?
Yeah. Okay. This was an offspring of Darwin.
Why we never made the Galapagos Island?
That's where he did it.
Okay. Well, I don't know these things.
Anyway.
Okay. Thank you to our viewers and listeners that do. I appreciate you. And for those that are laughing like me, are like, what is this guy talking about? Welcome back. Okay.
Because what Darwin's hypothesis is that evolution changes species over time, which grew over a couple of decades into God didn't really create any of this. And then we got into the amoeba becomes a fish, becomes a lizard, becomes an animal, becomes a bird, that kind of thing.
I think it happened long before that. I believe that it happened when Lucifer, who was appointed as worship leader in the heavens, decided that he was greater than God and was tossed from heaven. And we have to believe that before he was tossed, he must have been a gifted musician if he was a worship leader. And he knew how to take this music and to bring people into a state of worship, the very creation of God, because we know that Lucifer, aka Satan, is not a creator. He's only a destructor.
Correct.
Right? So once he fell to the earth, what would he do? He would probably influence people like Darwin.
And this music professor, kind of like the screw tape letters. I agree.
Yes.
I agree.
Yes.
So the interesting thing is that from ancient Greece up to 1920 in the West, music was tonality and rhythm in harmony, which moves your soul and in worship of God, the creator, right? And then there was a intentional turning away from that.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the 60s, they started, it's not a universal proposition. There were still people creating music after 1920 that followed tonality and rhythm and harmony. So it's not like everybody stopped.
Right.
But there was this influence coming in, probably satanic, probably.
I would believe so, because everyone who's listening and has watched this knows what it's like when you're in deep worship and you're hearing great music and you feel like you almost feel like you're not a resident of the earth anymore, that you're just being serenaded by angels, and there's just all this beautiful worship. And we also know that there are times where we're like, wait, where'd that come from? There's dissonance. It happens on the radio when you're listening to some songs. I know that some of the songs that were really good in the 30s and in the 40s and in the 50s were remade in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. And then songs from the 60s, 70s, and 80s were remade in the 90s and the 2000s and then the 2010s. And then those were remade. And what's funny is everybody's doing covers of everybody now. So it's like people don't even know the originals anymore. And I think that it goes back to what you're saying. I don't know why we can't just accept that something's good and love it and enjoy it, rather than thinking that we need to destroy it, because that seems to be what's happening with a lot of music today, in my own opinion.
And so if an individual believes that God built music into the universe and we are discovering how to enjoy it, that's a particular perspective that is different from desiring music that's not harmonious. And if an individual thinks, no, we can disassemble music and create it any way we want, and we'll just tell everybody this sounds great, and after enough time passes, this stuff will pass for good music. And if you got to pay attention to life, that's the thing.
Are you saying life is a musical note?
I don't know.
Is life a symphony, Jim?
No, it's a cereal. Haven't you ever had that?
Life is a cereal?
Life cereal, the little crunchy squares. You can get them
You
in
just
checks.
ruined my moment of being deep as life is a symphony. I was going to go into a deep, theological musing, but you just ruined it. No, you just ruined it now. No, thank you, Satan, Lucifer, for ruining my music. Okay, anyway, go back to your thoughts. I apologize.
It's the longest symphony ever written, if life is a symphony. They usually last, from the beginning to the end, not from breathing to not breathing.
Have you not heard some of those long songs? In fact, when I do
In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida?
when I do karaoke with my daughter, she forbids me from doing any songs from the 70s or 80s, because a lot of them have these long rock intros in there, or outros, or just a guitar solo, and I'm sitting there enjoying karaoke. She's bored. She's like, move on.
Really?
Oh, it cracks me up. And then of course when I like to
What kind
sing.
of music does she like?
She likes.
I love that kind of music.
She's more she likes things like Evanescence. She likes some of the women singers that are really
singers.
no, some really good ones. She likes kind of rhythm and blues kind of stuff. She likes Frank Sinatra, so she has kind of an
Crooners.
interesting, kind of a way.
I don't know what Evanescence is.
Evanescence was a group in the, I want to say, late 1990s, maybe early 2000s. Beautiful singer. This
Oh, this
girl,
is a person.
well, it was a group, but the lead singer was female. Amy Lee was her name. Fantastic voice. I mean,
Like
I gotta
Chinese
say,
Lee
no,
or like
no,
Robert
no,
E.
no,
Lee?
no, 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 like, well, I wouldn't say like Robert E. Lee, but she has a fantastic voice. They had a couple of really good songs that were played during, I think, in those times with some vampire movies because they were very emo kind of things. But I have to say that, again, going back to the karaoke, because it ties into what you're saying with the change in music, is when I sing like the Elvis songs, they're over in like 2.5 minutes. The songs from the 50s were just, they had their sequence of chords that were pretty similar. I mean, all the songs, some were fast, some were slow, but they were the same 4 or 5 chords or whatever. And then when you started moving into the 60s, you got into some of the rock, but some of them were ballads. And Bob Dylan, some of his songs were really long, and you'd have to get through it. And then the 70s came, and then we were talking 10-minute songs.
Well, then John Moog invented the synthesizer.
Oh, well.
You know what? That is a really good documentary. It's called Moog, Moog. It's about him. And all of what he did is he created this, like when computers were first there, they filled the whole room. Not PCs,
oh, I
but
know,
right?
I know.
So the Moog synthesizer was this huge thing without a keyboard, and there were dials. It's a really great. You got to watch it.
No,
kids that think synthesizers are electric keyboards, they got no clue.
You probably haven't watched some of these, but there are some what they call soaking worship videos that you can find on YouTube, where a lot of it is just synthesized worship music. We've got some local musicians here that write what they call like this soaking worship music, that there's no words. It's just powerful music that kind of gets you into a state of just where you're in deep prayer, meditation. I know some people have
kind of like Gregorian chants.
No. This is different. Those of you that are listening and watching, if you know what I'm talking about and you have your favorites, put it in the comments below, because Jim needs to be educated.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking
Jim
about.
does not know what we're talking about, but that would be great. But I think that it goes back to the what you're talking about, the synthesizers, because each music or each style of music, it does bring a different state of awareness, right? In the 70s, when we were listening to rock music, you're not going to get into a state of meditation when you're listening to those kind of rock music.
Depends on what your medication is.
Well, and not only medication. I mean, I got to say that I know this for a fact that some of that music was highly demonic. I was a rock and roll girl in high school, so I was listening to all, and I won't name them because I don't want all the Christian people that know me to go, Eva, did you repent? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. But there were some music that you're just listening to, that pounding, powerful music. And it might be good music when you're thinking about what the keyboardist is doing or what the guitar player or what the drummer is doing. But when you start adding in the music, the lyrics, and you're going, this is getting into my soul, you can get into some pretty dangerous territory when you're not paying attention to what you're listening to in music.
Well, I think so. But the point of talking about, did God create the universe with music built in that we're discovering or not, is something that hopefully the listeners and viewers from now on, when they go to their church services, which always have some form of music, either, there's always something, they can ponder this while they're engaged in those songs and see if they recognize anything.
And this is another call to action. I want you guys that are watching and listening right now to type in the comments below what you like about your worship team, maybe concerns you have about your worship team. Give them a shout out if they do a good job. And if you have a link to them, link it so that people can start seeing what some of the churches are doing in worship, because I do think that good worship can change the world.
Absolutely. Do you know Vineyard the church
Oh,
vineyard.
yes.
And you know the
Yep.
the Dwell live worship CD
They
thing
had
that they put on?
Hosanna and Integrity came together and they did a lot of worship songs.
Right.
There was Vineyard. I think a lot of people are doing the one from Australia.
Hillsong.
Hillsong, yes.
They
yes.
actually, it's very interesting.
Oh, there's a lot of controversy on Hillsong, but
Yeah.
but we cannot deny that there has been some pretty powerful songs that have
Sure.
come out of Hillsong. We've got some local groups here, some local churches that have some fantastic worship music.
I think Sacred Heart's worship team with the
That-
Lamados
you're
is
on it, Jim. That is so
fabulous.
unfair. Yes, I'm on a worship team. That's so awesome because
I'm like the weak
no,
link.
the Lamados. No, the Lamados are extremely good musicians.
And Jeff Lau plays guitar, and
Yeah.
I play electric bass. And
Yeah. I mean, I was blessed to be raised in a family of musicians. Everybody in my family, my mom, my dad, my grandparents, we all come from a musical background. So we all play some kind of instrument. So for us to sit around the house, I remember when my brother Eric was passing away, we would just sit in his room in the hospital and we would just play music because for Eric, that was powerful for him. But music, again, going back to the topic of today, there is something powerful about worship music that can take sadness and turn it to joy, that can take forgiveness and turn it into grace. There is something about that powerful aspect, which goes back to your question, did God create it? Yes, I believe, because when I'm at the beach and I'm hearing the sound of the waves hit the shore, I am hearing a natural rhythm in my head. And a lot of times I hear a rhythm in everything, and maybe it's part of my drum and bugle corps days. I mean, if I hear the fan, I'm in my head
It's
going,
your OCD.
yeah, you know, I can hear the rhythm. But I'm looking for God's creation in all of music that I hear.
And I want to add just one last thought because this is true. When I was in college, I took a introduction to philosophy class, and we had to do a research paper. And so I took Plato's description of what king should be, a philosopher king. And I researched into Jimi Hendrix, and I presented the paper in the paper, the argument that Jimi Hendrix met Plato's description of what a philosopher king is. But what Jimi Hendrix actually said, because I read all these things about him, he said music is the window to the soul.
Mm-hmm. Well, he stole that from your eyes are the windows to your soul. Whoever said that first should get the credit.
Okay.
Okay. But
he's
anyway,
dead. I mean, what do you want to do?
I don't know. I agree. Well, we appreciate you spending time today. We thank you, Jim, for leading the discussion today. We wanted to do something a little different today. You want to make sure that you plug in next week, because next week you're going to find out what are the 3 pet peeves of Jim Hochberg. Now, Jim has many pet peeves. So we're not.
I think I am a pet peeve.
Well, that's a whole nother show.
Okay.
But you want to know 3 things that are really driving Jim Hochberg absolutely crazy here in the state of Hawaii. They're all here in the state of the Hawaii things.
It's next week. How do we know?
I don't know. You got to be thinking these things already, Jim.
Okay.
I
Well,
mean,
my
things bug you.
deadline's in a week.
Okay. Well, in any case, make sure you like, subscribe, share, comment, and please send this video to your friends because Jim and I really want to expand the show. Even though Jim is leaving, he's still going to have a part of this show. So I don't want you all to think that, Jim is going to leave and not have anything to do with the show. But stay tuned, and we will see you all next week. Mahalo, everybody.
Aloha.